I have a bunch of parts to bend today. If you've never seen one of these older mechanical press brakes work, stick around and I'll show you how this one works. Most of these older machines like this is a 1957 Chicago Dryson Crump. She's a 25 ton, but she runs on 3-phase power. So the way I overcome the 3-phase power in my issue, considering I only have single phase, is I have a American rotary phase converter. Turn on the phase converter. I have a reverse and forward switch on this one, and I also have speed control. And all this speed control does is it adjusts the tension on the belt to the flywheel, which either speeds it up or slows her down. I'll turn her on and you can see the big flywheel spinning. But basically there's a motor driving this big flywheel, and this flywheel is what's creating the force needed to drive this ram down. And this is controlled by a foot pedal here. This foot pedal is adjustable. You can take it off and move it wherever you may need it, but it's basically linked to a clutch, and that clutch is what releases or disengages the flywheel or engages the flywheel. So just for demonstration purposes here, remember, hands are clear. I'll show you once I engage the clutch, she comes down and then we'll come back up. Something that's rarely talked about is it's not so much that the press brake is expensive. Where the cost really comes into effect is on these dies. There's numbers of dies, top punches. In this particular situation, this is 1/8 inch material. So I'm using the proper dies and punches to bend 90 degrees in 1/8 inch material. How do you adjust your angles? Do you want a 90-degree bend, a 45-degree bend, a 30-degree bend? And unlike the CNC machines out there, this is all done manually. If you look closely here, there's a gauge here, an increment gauge, and you have to manually set each one. And then the way I do it is I'll use test pieces and I'll adjust this and lock it down once I get it at the right angle I want. But it's really fine tuning it, making a bend, checking that bend, adjusting this increment either up or down. A lot of the reasons you don't see these anymore in like the newer shops or the newer tools is there's some safety issues with these types of mechanical press brakes. Again, my hands are clear. You always want to make sure your hands are clear. But once you hit this controller and she comes. So right now, I showed you the speed adjustment earlier. I've got the speed turned way down. It's a little slower than most guys would run one, but it's just more for safety reasons. That's something that I did. Also, when I let go of my clutch, she will stop the minute that I release this clutch. So that's something that we can use to our advantage. One of the reasons I put the reverse switch on here, because if for some reason you hit something and the only option you would have is to go down and come back up until it finished its stroke. With this reverse switch, no matter where it's at in the stroke, I can reverse it and it can come back up. And guys, there's a lot of variables when it comes to bending steel or bending sheet metal. I'm not going to get into all that here. We basically just use a K-factor rule. So that's how we kind of determine our bend lines. Once we get our bend lines and we get our legs to where we want them to be, I set up a back gauge, and all a back gauge does is just something that allows you to put material in and do repeated bends. I know I've been talking a lot. I'm gonna go ahead and I'll do a bend and I'll show you how it works. So I'm gonna insert my piece of metal that I need to bend. I'm gonna push it up against the backstop, make sure my fingers are clear, let it bend. And then I'll always double check. I just always double check my bends to make sure I'm achieving 90 degrees, and this one here is 90 degrees, so we're good. So we'll do the other side. Again, this piece of metal is coming up like this. So you always got to make sure your fingers out of the way, flat hands, fingers together, touch your backstop. And there we go. So if you ever come across one of these older mechanical press brakes and they work, you can usually get them pretty cheap. I got this one at an auction. Keep the safety factors in mind. These things will bite you, so you have to be very cautious with that. read the safety manual, understand what's going on. I'm new to the whole farming process. I'm learning as I go. I've owned this one here about 6 months, and it's definitely been an asset in the shop. It's done a lot of work for me. You know, it gets a small shop like me away from just like welding two pieces together. You know, now we could farm metal, and I think it's a cleaner look, and with the different die options that are out there, I don't know, the sky's the limit on it.